Inside the Sixers, their loss last night. Let's take a look at some of the things that happened, what could change, what's concerning. Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the Sixers and the NBA for CBS Sports, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. And Michael, obviously, that game last night had a lot of different problems and storylines and things to kind of break down here. I guess at the top of the list was, is it time to be concerned with what we saw from Joel Embiid, or do you think that was a blip on the radar?
Yeah, Mike, I absolutely think it's time to be concerned. That was, to me, the biggest takeaway in the game. Obviously, the loss was a big disappointment, but how Joel looked throughout the course of that game was, definitely the most concerning thing to me. I think, he definitely deserves props and credit for trying to play through this injury, but it does seem like the type of injury that could potentially get worse with wear and tear. And, I think there has to be a level of concern that that's what we're starting to see. He looked really good in those first two games of the series. He looked, still real solid in game 3, but maybe slightly worse. And then last night was, obviously probably the worst playoff performance of his career. And you could just see he didn't have, not only the shots weren't falling, but he didn't have the bounce that he usually has. He didn't have the explosion. Especially that was obviously evident on the last play down the stretch there where they ran the pick and roll for him to get the layup right at the rim to, give the Sixers a lead at, the closing minutes. And he, missed the layup, didn't get fouled. After the game, he said that he normally would try to go up and dunk that and draw a foul, but he just didn't have the lift and the explosion. So, I am concerned. Obviously, Joel at 80% or whatever he's at now is still really good. But, is that good enough to get the Sixers where they want to be? That's the question now.
Yeah, and I guess, is that a one-night thing? Is it, hey, day-to-day? He said, I'm not going to be 100% until after this season is over. He acknowledged that, but it's how he manages it. And maybe,
right.
In game 1, 2, and 3, it felt better. Last night, maybe not so much. Could it just be he's going to have some nights where he has it and some nights that he doesn't? Could he come back on Wednesday night and be 39-point Joel Embiid again?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the case, Mike. And I think it was last week when you and I were talking about this injury. It's the type of injury that you're never really in the clear from, for the rest of this season. Even if he's cleared to play, there was the potential that, he could play and the knee could swell up. It could get worse. It could cause him more pain. And I think, like you said, at this point, he's obviously delaying any, if he needs any sort of surgery or anything on it, he's delaying it till the end of the season. And moving forward, it's all just going to be about his level of pain tolerance and how much he can, continue to play through that injury. So I do think it's going to be an up and down situation. Obviously, hopefully tomorrow night he's able to look more like he did during the regular season. But to me, it's going to be a game in, game out situation.
Obviously, after most games, win or lose, Ben Simmons is a conversation. He admitted last night, hey, I should be more aggressive. Well, people say that almost every single night. But last night's the one. Like, to me, I'm not a Ben Simmons hater. I appreciate what he does. I appreciate who he is and his role on this team. But I always say, if Embiid doesn't have it, Harris steps up. If Harris doesn't step up, that's when Ben Simmons needs to step in. You can't ask for more than you got from Curry. He was doing his job. So this is the game where I say, you know what? I don't have a problem pointing the finger at Ben Simmons. The question is, really, how do they get that out of him? Like, what can they do on nights when they need him to kind of say, Ben, it's time to change your approach a little bit?
I don't know, Mike. That's, really, a great question. And it's one that they've been dealing with, obviously, for a few years now. In game 3, obviously, it was a pep talk at halftime from Doc Rivers and Joel that basically told him, like, hey, we need you to go out there and dominate and take over. And he did that in the second half of game 3. And I think that's why his performance in the second half last night just took one shot, no shots in the fourth quarter. I thought that was especially kind of discouraging after how well he had played in the second half of game 3. I thought, maybe a light bulb kind of went off in his head in that game that, hey, these guys can't, Bogdanovich can't guard me, John Collins can't guard me. And I thought he would, potentially carry that over into game 4. And that just wasn't the case. To me, the only rational explanation that I can really think of is the foul shooting struggles. I think he's 8 for 25 in this series. And I think that's really in his head, and it's preventing him from wanting to, be the aggressive Ben Simmons that we all want to see and attack the basket, because he doesn't want to draw the fouls and he doesn't want to go to the line and, be forced to knock those shots down. It's a lingering issue with him. And like we've said in the past, it comes out, especially in the postseason when teams, scheme to take Joel away or try to minimize Tobias. And then, it falls to him to step up. And like you said, he does a ton of other things on the floor. I still thought he played pretty good defense on Trae Young throughout the night yesterday and things like that. But, this is the enigma that Ben Simmons is. When you need him to step up, sometimes he does and sometimes he doesn't. And unfortunately, last night was the latter.
Yep, absolutely. I thought last night, there's nights where you say, hey, Ben, he set guys up. They hit their shots. They got open looks. He played great defense. He did that in the first half. He had a good first half. And then I got to wonder, and I said yesterday, Michael, the loss of Green would be bigger than people are going to give it credit for because he wasn't shooting well. But that's not always the case. He's the best three-point shooter in the corner in the entire league during the regular season. He shot the ball well in the Washington series. He hit 5 threes in one game. He hit 3 threes in another game. He did not shoot the ball well in the first 3 games here. However, his 40% from 3 made the defender have to go out on him. The defender thinks that even though he's not shooting well, at any moment he can get going. How much did not having Green and how much will not having Green affect this team?
It's huge, Mike. I think you nailed it. I think it was a loss that's underestimated by a lot of the Sixers fans because he wasn't shooting good and because he, had a tough time guarding Trae Young in game 1. I think people thought that the Sixers could just, brush off playing without him. And that's not the case at all because you see Korkmaz is half the player that Danny Green is. And Matisse Thybulle is half the player that Danny Green is. Matisse brings it on the defensive end. Korkmaz brings it on the offensive end in terms of the floor spacing. Danny does both. So you have him out there. There's not a drop off defensively like is the case when we saw with Korkmaz last night. And if you have him out there, there's not a drop off offensively like we saw. The Hawks gave Matisse, by my count, I think at least 3 wide open corner threes that he had in that game yesterday. That's the Danny Green shot like you said, and he didn't connect on any of them. So, to me, being able to have a guy out there that can play defense and can knock down shots to complement the Sixers stars was a huge part of the reason that they were so successful all season. And it's a huge part of the reason that they did not win that game last night. And I think moving forward, you saw Doc, he was juggling around with that 5th starter spot. He started Korkmaz. He went with Matisse for a while. He went with Shake for a while. He went with Maxey for a while. He just was having a hard time finding the replacement. Unfortunately, I think that's going to continue to be the case until Danny gets back out there.
Do they consider making a move in the starting lineup?
It's tough because, like we were just touching on, Matisse would obviously be – yeah, go ahead.
Here's why, Michael. I mean, you look at what they did defensively on Korkmaz. You can game plan. You can draw up 6, 7, 8 plays saying, hey, when Korkmaz in the game, if he comes off the bench, you're not really doing that because now it's like you script a bunch of plays in the NFL. Let's run these 15 plays. Well, if I know Korkmaz is starting the game, I'm going to go right after him for the first 6, 7 plays.
Right, and for that reason, I do think that Doc will consider making a move. But then you take the flip side of that coin and you start Matisse. How much is that going to impact Joel's spacing in the post when they're, basically handing him a wide open corner threes to take, and the defense is not, Korkmaz when he's out there at least has the reputation of
all
a shooter.
Leading to why losing Green is bigger than people gave it credit for.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an injury that, he's not the star player. He's not the all-star. So you want to say, this team could overcome that. But he was, to me, a huge glue guy for the regular season on both ends. And there, like you said, that's, he's going to be extremely missed.
Yep. And quite frankly, I thought Rivers said something. I don't know if it was last night or the night he got hurt, but he said he always says the right thing at the right time. You wonder last night when that game started to get a little bit towards the momentum, who in that huddle stepped in there and said, yo, let's go. Let's calm down. We got, who's that leader guy right now?
Yeah, and that's the third part of what Danny brings to the floor that we're missing right now, the intangibles. He brings the offensive floor spacing, he brings a solid perimeter defense, and he brings that championship experience. It's not a coincidence that he started for 3 different, franchises that went on to win a title with him starting. Not a coincidence, and he's, a huge factor. And he's still out there with the guys, but obviously when you're not on the court, your leadership is minimized. So, that's another part of what they're missing with him out.
I know a lot of frustration towards Ben Simmons. Absolutely 100% warrants it in last night's game. But I was a little disappointed in Tobias Harris as well. When your first guy's not going, you're number 2. He had 20, which he had a good night. Efficient, but there's nights where that Harris has 28 to 30. I thought last night needed to be one of them.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. And I think in general, just the whole offense really looked out of sync and in disarray during that second half. A lot of ISO ball and like one-on-one, lack of ball movement. And I think Tobias was, guilty of that. Like you said, he had a solid game, shot over 50% from the field and had 20. But, it's up to these guys in the situation. It's one thing for Ben to come out after the game and say, like, hey, I needed to be more aggressive. You need him to realize that in the moment. And the same with Tobias, I think, is he can say, look at his game and say, hey, I had 20 points. I shot 50% from the field. I had a pretty good game. But when you're out there with Joel and you're seeing him struggle, probably more than we've seen him struggle easily all season or in his career, something just needs to click for you to be like, hey, maybe I need to bump this shooting up to 25 shots, be a little bit more aggressive. And we just didn't see that from anyone, really, not Ben, not Tobias. And I think, obviously, that was a huge problem.
All right, MKB. So what's the adjustment? What's Doc Rivers, Sam Cassell, Dan Burke, and crew, Dave Yergin, what are they talking about? What are they watching? I know they're watching film. They're going to talk at 4 o'clock today. So what are they seeing on that film that they need to adjust to?
I mean, the number one thing I think obviously is Joel's health. I think they need to, try to figure out or talk to him at least and see how good, like how much is he going to be able to give. And I think that they'll have to try to run more sets for other guys. I think one of the things I noticed in the second half was, Joel's your bread and butter. He has been all season. But when he's like clearly struggling like he was in that game last night, I thought he kind of they were force feeding him the ball in the post and it just wasn't there. I would have liked to see some more plays drawn up for, like you said at the top, Seth Curry, who I thought had a great game and kind of disappeared down the stretch. It's because he wasn't getting touches. Obviously, I think they should draw up more sets to get Ben going downhill and going to the basket like they did early in the second half of game 3 to, get him getting aggressive and getting in the flow of the game because that wasn't there yesterday. And then same with Tobias, try to get him to hunt some more mismatches, maybe try to get, Kevin Huerter or Trae Young on him in the post where he can take advantage of it. But, to me, that was a game where it was execution was poor and obviously the play of some of your guys, mainly Joel, was poor. It wasn't necessarily a game where I would panic and completely adjust the game plan. I thought defensively they were like pretty solid up until the end. There was some errors, but overall I think it's a matter of they just need to to draw a little bit better offensively and get more out of their their main guys.
One thing Doc brought it up, and he actually used an expletive. I mean, he said they just out bleeping worked us last night.
Right.
That's an unacceptable. I know Michael Malone tried to say his team quit on him. That didn't work. They got swept out of there. Doc saying that they got outworked, and obviously that's the message was. I thought John Collins was a big difference maker in that game, and of course, he had a couple dunks, and it just changed the energy in that place, man. It felt like, but was that you just said it defensively? They only gave up 103. I mean, that's not a terrible defensive night, but the effort is that something that you're watching and saying, man, they just not only did they not have their best game, they didn't bring it.
Yeah, and I thought especially in the first half, I mean, things started to go downhill, obviously really bad in that third quarter. But I thought there was a huge missed opportunity in that first half where they really could have been up, put their foot on the Hawks' throat and took a commanding lead. And I thought there was a lot of, sloppy play, turnovers. And then that carried over into that third quarter, like you said, where John Collins, and I think he had 3 putback dunks in the third quarter. And, his energy and electricity got the crowd back into it. The other players started feeding off it, and the Sixers couldn't match that energy. Maybe you can chalk that up to it being a road game and the Hawks knowing that if they went down 3-1, it would have probably been a curtain call for them. But it's inexcusable to me when you're the top team and you have the chance to go up 3-1 in a series where your best player is hampered by an injury, and the more rest that you could get him, the better. And the series where you're going to potentially play the winner is now locked at 2-2, and there potentially could go 7 games with some injuries that the Nets are dealing with now. I think with all that going on, you need to come out with the attitude of like, hey, we need to take care of this business now to put ourselves in the best position moving forward. And they just didn't do that, and it was obviously very disappointing. All
right, last thing for MKB here. Obviously the pick and roll. They pick and rolled the Sixers to death the other night. I thought Trae Young was brilliant, even though he didn't shoot the ball all that well. I thought, one of the things about people I think miss on Simmons, he controls the pace, and they play at the pace and the style that they want to play. I thought Young took that from them last night and played the way he wanted to play. Even though he missed, he controlled, man. 18 assists. He was driving. He was like one of those Navy option quarterbacks. He just pitched it at the right time, passed it at the right time, floated it at the right time. That's something that they're going to have to figure out in Game 5 if Embiid is not – because they almost played better without him defensively. Well, they definitively played better without him
thing.
defensively.
He was, like you said, he was 8 for 26 from the field, which I think shows that the primary defender did a pretty good job on him, whether it was Ben or Matisse, like making him take difficult shots. But to me, it was the secondary defense and the help defense. Like as soon as Trae saw daylight or got an opportunity, he was dishing that thing off, and there was just too many cuts that were not defended well, too many open shooters on the perimeter, and things like that. And Trae did exactly what you want your superstar to do when things aren't going your way. He shot only 8 of 25 or 26 from the floor, I believe, but he had 18 assists. I mean, what else? When you're not shooting well, there's not much else you could do. I thought, like you said, especially in the second half, he controlled the tempo, he controlled the flow, and he basically controlled the Sixers defense. Instead of them being on the attack and forcing him to react, he was controlling and forcing the Sixers defense to react. And too many times they were just a step slow.
All right, MKB, let me get a couple thoughts on tonight. Looks like Harden's going to play. Is that enough, just having Harden out there?
I don't know, Mike. To me, I thought the Bucks were dead in the water after 2 games. I thought this was, potentially a sweep, and now we're looking at 2-2.
You're not alone there. Most people did, bud.
Right, that is true. But now, with these injuries, the Bucks seem to have the momentum, and with Harden, it's tough. We saw in the regular season when he first came back off the injury, it's a hamstring, so it's not something he can't really be doing a lot of conditioning in the meantime. I think it's going to take him a little bit of time to work back into the flow of the game. So, to me, this is a pick 'em either way. It's in Brooklyn, so I guess I'll give the nod to the Nets. But, this series has got, a whole lot more interesting over the past couple of games.
Yeah, Harden's going to try to play. Irving is definitely out, so you're going to try to get Harden back tonight. We'll see how that goes. Out west, we've got the Clippers. I mean, hey, it's 2-2 all of a sudden out there, too. What kind of adjustments were made in that series?
It's something about the Clippers this year and starting slow in series. It's the second straight series. They went down 0-2 and then won the next 2 games. They did the same thing against Dallas, and it's just a matter of them, I think, finding their flow and playing their game. Paul George offensively has been much better over the past 2 games. I think they've done a better job of defending Donovan Mitchell, trapping him a little bit, double-teaming him a little bit, trying to get the ball out of his hands because he was, torching them in the first 2 games, much like Luka was in the first round. So I think the Clippers, a lot of their issues are focus related, and I think now that they, just like in that first series, now that they got their focus together, I think they could pull this one out.
All right, Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the NBA for CBS Sports, and are you going to be in Philly tomorrow night, the game?
Yeah, I'll be there.
I'm 50-50 on that one.
Oh yeah,
I'm thinking about it. I haven't been to a game the whole year.
It would be a good one for you to make your debut.
I know, man. I'm either that or I'm waiting for a game 7, maybe. I don't know. Do you think it gets there?
Sunday night.
Right.
I picked the Sixers in 6 before the series started, so I'm going to stick with that. I think hopefully as long as Joel can stay healthy, they bounce back in tomorrow night and then take care of business in Atlanta in Game 6.
I think I had Sixers. I know I had Sixers in 6. I think you're right about that. It all depends on what Embiid we get on Wednesday night. I think that's a big one. We'll keep our eyes on that. By the way, Doc Rivers talking in 18 minutes. I know you got to get ready for that. MKB, the real Mike KB on Twitter, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk on the hotline. All right, bud.
Give me a shout if you head down there tomorrow, Mike.
I will do. Thanks, man.
See you, man.
All right, there he goes. Michael Kaskey-Blomain, of course, covered the Sixers for 97.3 ESPN.com, and he has since moved on nationally